Good evening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to News in Focus. My name is Faraz Patel. We say Jazakallah to you, the viewer, for staying with us. If you are living in the Tshwane metro, it's been a hell of a few weeks for you. New mayor, but same old problems that are continuing. That is, of course, the water crisis that persists within the capital city. Tshwane has escalated the ongoing water crisis to what it calls an intergovernmental level. Now, the city is seeking external interventions following a power trip at Rand Water's Palmit Booster pump station, which has left several areas without water. Now, the outage, which began last week, Wednesday, continues to affect the city's water supplies as critical reservoirs remain low, with airlocks in the system preventing proper water flow. Joining us now via Zoom, I'd like to welcome Benoit Le Roy, who is from the South African Water Chamber. He also serves as its CEO. Mr. Le Roy, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us here on News in Focus.
Evening to you and the viewers.
Mr. Le Roy, I mean, it's the capital city. You just scratch your head thinking, surely there could have been an intervention quite a long time ago when they saw this coming. And it just seems to be a crisis that deepens every time you take a look at it.
Well, it started at least 30 years ago with the underspending in water infrastructure assets. And what happened is the chickens have come home to roost because a lot of the assets are decades past their useful life. So that's what. So there's no quick fix to this. It's a really big problem in Gauteng, and especially Tshwane and Johannesburg. And Johannesburg has put a 26 billion rand tag to fixing their non-revenue water. Tshwane would not be any different, and it only spends 120 million a year at the moment. So with 120 million a year, you're not going to fix anything.
Mr. Le Roy, I want to talk of infrastructure. So I actually happened to be in the capital city yesterday visiting relatives, and a lot of their problems when they're speaking to councillors is that they keep on saying the infrastructure is just below par. They take it to, of course, council, they speak to the representatives, but you know, you've mentioned it, over 120 million rand. It's not going to fix anything, but there just seems to be a sense of lacklusterness when it comes to trying to solve this issue. And again, 30 years, and there just seems to be no real solution with regards to this.
So I think there's a big gap in the understanding at political level, at local government sphere of really how serious the situation is. And you know, water assets and infrastructure are generally speaking below ground, and you know, you see a few reservoirs, but generally speaking, you don't see that infrastructure. So it's really out of sight, out of mind, literally. And it's like electricity crisis. People started reacting when the you know, when the power stations started falling over. Now we start seeing the power stations are more or less catering with the situation, because the private sector has put in 7 gigawatts last year of its own solar PV. So with water, there's no alternative, so we can't do it the same way. But you know, to catch up 30 years worth of infrastructure maintenance is not an overnight job. It's a 5 to 10 year program at least.
Mr. Le Roy, I want to touch on, you've mentioned private sector in terms of the electricity, and we see its role now in trying to contribute towards it all. We seem to have lost Mr. Le Roy. We're going to try and get him back to continue this conversation. But one of the biggest problems that is faced is that there is going to come a time where we have potential, you know, private investment into this. No problem. No, I'm glad that you're back, Mr. Le Roy. I want to touch on private investment because that seems to be one of the options that are out there, and whether or not it's going to come to fruition remains to be seen. But in terms of water supply, I mean, where are we in terms of the conversation of the private sector getting involved?
I think we quite, from a national government perspective, the policy is there and it's embedded in the National Infrastructure Plan 2050. But, that's at national government level. At local government level, it isn't. And we've got this chasm between national and local government with provincial in the middle. When at first provincial government, I think, said this has nothing to do with us. Now it is everything to do with us. So, it's local government is independent. So it's quite difficult to force a council. National government has very little powers or capacity to force a council to actually take heed. So national government admits and really has incorporated in its policy the need for private sector participation. But local government is in actual fact been pushing back for quite a while. And unfortunately, the crisis has to arrive before the reality can set in. So I think it is, generally speaking, acknowledged, you can hear it in the political speak, that we have to have private sector. And it was in the media conference today where the minister mentioned that we have to enhance private sector participation. But to do that, the environment has to be, it is quite hostile at the moment. The creditworthiness is very, very bad. These things have to be remedied. So, private sector money will only flow where it feels it will get a return on investment and it has reasonable security. So these have to be addressed. And quite honestly, it's not very easy at the moment to do that, because there's so many musical chairs within councils at the moment, especially the metros, that there's very little faith from the private sector to embark without very stringent guarantees. And the question is, how do we embed those guarantees, going forward? So and national government can't stand surety like it would in most countries with sovereign guarantees, because our balance sheet is locked in Eskom at the moment. So, and that's going to be like that for a decade.
Yeah, you bring up a very important point, the musical chairs that are, of course, happening within the metro. Mr. Le Roy, I want to touch on Tshwane now saying this is now an intergovernmental level. I just want to get an understanding, does this 100% absolve them from trying to solve the water crisis, or where is the level? Where is the playing field in terms of intergovernmental levels share of assisting, and where does Tshwane come into this? Can you maybe elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, so the Constitution is very clear. The Water Service Authority, which is the metro, which is Tshwane, has 100% mandate and accountability over water and sanitation, electricity and refuse. So, no, it cannot palm it off onto national government. I think this intergovernmental thing is a lot of political hoobaloo. I think it's just saying we are talking between the three spheres of government and we are united. But the mandate doesn't change because of that.
Mr. Le Roy, I want to come to national government. And, of course, you've got Pemi Majadina, who sits as the Water Affairs Minister. I know she has said at times that she's inherited quite this problem in terms of the infrastructure that has been decayed, the fact that across the entire country, water seems to be quite a challenge, especially in the rural areas and areas that are really left wanting in terms of water supply. But how much of a reactive nature is government continuing to have in trying to solve this issue? I mean, you've mentioned it there. Every time there's a crisis, then everyone just stands up and starts waving their hands all around. But surely this can't be a case, especially when we're talking about water, which is embedded within the Constitution that every South African deserves to have.
Yeah, we said in 2002 that there was a water crisis that would unfold over the next 20 years. So call us lies for 2 years extra. But, we weren't heard. And in actual fact, a lot of businesses and foreign engineering water companies left the country in those years. I had to close the oldest one, which was Benoit Water at the time, purely because government wasn't investing in water services and sanitation infrastructure. So, the green drop, blue drop, no drop reports reaffirm this. And then we had a hiatus, during the Zuma years where the reports were not published because the news was too bad. But still the same people in power. So you can't blame the previous ministers, etc. It's your political party that has brought us to this lack of a party with little water around. And the problem with water is it's a very expensive, slow process. It's not like electricity. It's not instantaneous. and there's health considerations around it, so you can't just do anything. So it's a bit of belt and braces from an engineering and scientific perspective. But the mandate is on local government, and local government has to be held to account. Taking it to court is not going to hold it to account. You know, citizens have to elect, and they will get the government they deserve. So you wonder, how bad have you been for 30 years if this is what you deserve? But you know, we have to change it. That civil servants and politicians work for us, not the other way around. And that concept hasn't sunk in, I think. And that's part of our evolution that we're busy going through. So water at the moment is 100% politics. And as long as it stays like that, it's not going to get resolved very easily.
Mr. Le Roy, one final question. As the water chamber, the South African water chamber, is there been consulting on, if not a daily basis, on a weekly basis in trying to find a way? Because you've got the stakeholders like yourself that are there who have the necessary know-how to try and advise government and local government on what to do. But if those conversations are happening, is there any supposed taking it in? Is there any absorbing of the knowledge from government side in terms of understanding where we are as a country? Because the last thing South Africa needs, and I'm talking about the entire country, is an actual day zero.
So we've done our work at the national government, and we've been unable to penetrate local government. It's been bricked up, and it's been impossible in actual fact, because you know, the policies we've worked with government at a national level, we'd like to see them now being spread at local government. But we haven't managed to really get a foot in the door, purely because of the politics at council, which is really stopping any real progress. I think we're at a crossroad now where it's going to have to change. It can't stay as it is now. Sure. So I think we're at this crossroad.
Mr. Le Roy, thank you so much for joining us here on News in Focus. Much appreciated.
You're welcome.
That's Benoit Le Roy from the South African Water Chamber, serving as their CEO. Yeah, I mean, the last thing everyone wants is the capital city, you know, the legislative, the administrative capital of the country being plunged into having no water. Of course, it is a city that at this very moment is having musical chairs in terms of the mayors. It's had, I don't know, 5 mayors in the last 4 years. And now we're asking ourselves, can this inconsistent leadership, because that's what it is, it's actually inconsistent leadership, deliver the basics to its citizens, its residents? A few years ago, you had wastage which was not being collected. And now you've got a water crisis. And Tshwane is going to the intergovernmental level to say, assist us. But it's not just Tshwane that's having the problem. It's other areas in the country that are also going through it. No less the city of Johannesburg, which itself is having question marks as to whether the residents of this city are going to actually have water come the holiday season. It's the last thing you need. Yes, we've had this heat wave that has happened. There is, alhamdulillah, some rain that has come through. But can the infrastructure cater for the millions that stay within the city? That is the big question for local government and, of course, the metros. After the break, Mozambique, of course, politically, it's been plunged into a crisis, but it's had an effect here at home in South Africa with, of course, the Lebombo border post. Let's have that conversation after the break.